Right. Hey, everybody. This is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. Today, I've got Dustin, the personal sports card dad, on. And it's been a while, so I wanted to get your take on a lot of things, in fact. And how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, it's good to be back. I remember going back. When was it? Was it 2 years ago when we were talking about you starting a YouTube channel? You were like, I think that I might start a YouTube channel. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, you have to do it. You have to do it. I remember you've been writing for a long time. So yeah, bringing it to video, it's been great. I love watching your stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a little bit of peer pressure from you, in fact, um, to start my own channel. I actually didn't think that I was ever going to be able to do that. That was not something that I would be able to do. But if I can do it, anybody can do it. And what was it like when you first started your channel?
I didn't really know what to expect at all. I'd never done any sort of YouTube or any sort of video anything other than like family videos. And I mean, I don't have any sort of broadcast background. That's pretty obvious, I think, when you watch me, because I'm not formal at all, very informal. But yeah, it was very much kind of like I wanted to start it just to see what would happen. Could I build something, but then also connect with other people? It was right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was also, like, I wonder if there's other people that are crazy into collectibles the same way that I am. And I knew that there was some people on YouTube that I'd already found, but I figured, this could be a way to, kind of an outreach, to meet up with other people. And that's exactly what's happened. It's been great for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So I was gonna quit card collecting when a buddy of mine had passed away, and it was really difficult because there's something we had shared, and one of the things that I really enjoy about the hobby, probably more than actually acquiring cards, is seeing new people and experiencing new things, and just the stories behind all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's probably, I don't know, for me, maybe it's a little more important. There's the camaraderie of everything, you know?
Yeah. Well, especially too, because not that you don't collect modern stuff, but you're heavy into vintage. And I feel like really to be at the level that you are in vintage, you have to enjoy history in general. I look at baseball card collectors as really kind of historians that happen to collect baseball cards. A lot of people, I'm not saying everybody,
Yeah.
but like yourself, and I've met other, vintage collectors where they're also kind of, there's a tie to the time period and what was going on during the time in the US or globally, and how did that impact cards, or, so all that stuff is really interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people don't actually maybe not realize that sports cards, not just baseball cards, but sports cards have a lot to do with the really kind of the founding of the 20th century. It's a mirror, and like a lot of people say, like baseball mirrors American society at any given time.
Mm.
Um, it's really kind of true with the hobby as well, and I actually want to get your take on. I know you came into the hobby again in what, 2018, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. 2018. Exactly.
So what was it? Can you remember? Can you remember what it was like when you were a kid collecting, comparing it to today?
Yeah. And what's funny about that is I feel like 2018 is even different than it is now. Even 5 years later, I feel like the hobby is a lot different than it was in 2018. But yeah, if you go all the way back to 1987, 1988 was when that's when I got my first cards, and it was 88 Don Russ baseball cards. And then it was kind of during a perfect storm of 89 football coming out, Pro Set and Score, coming out. And then you had, of course, like Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders and Troy Aikman and Deion Sanders, Hall of Fame, football draft class. Obviously, we didn't know they were all going to be Hall of Famers at the time, but,
Right.
And then Beckett Magazine came out with Beckett basketball, Beckett football, because there was Beckett baseball, but I was always looking for, like Diamond Kings, like Bo Jackson, Diamond Kings. You'd open up a pack of Donruss and you're looking for like, oh, I got a Cal Ripken Diamond King. That's awesome. But then when football and basketball emerged, that was my first foray into those packs. Like At the card shop, you could see, Jordan rookie card, or you could see like a Julius Erving, 70s cards or 60s basketball. But outside of the card shop, you didn't have any sort of, as a kid, like any sort of visual as to what that looked like. And you couldn't get on the internet and research it. It was literally like your Beckett magazine, and then you're talking to your local card shop people and you're trying to figure it out. So really those late 80s basketball, football sets, I think that kind of supercharged it for me, because I enjoyed the baseball cards. That was fun. But then when you added in the football and the basketball, because I was also following those sports as a kid, more so as a big New Orleans Saints fan, even going back then it was like, oh, sweet, there's Saints cards, so it kind of brought it all full circle.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we didn't have, obviously, is the internet. I mean, if you think about it, the internet's only like maybe 25 years old at best, the modern internet, that is. And for me, growing up in the 80s, it's a great decade. It really was. Really fun, very cheesy. There was a lot of video games, and the one thing that I'm kind of starting to see now as I'm getting older is that I am kind of reverting back to my childhood. And so now I'm still playing video games, and I'm going back to collect a lot of the cards that I grew up with, the players, because it is memories, right?
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating just to see, again, I've been in the hobby now for, oh God, since 1984, and at least vintage wise since 94. And just to see how, the technology has progressed since that time. And, it's, if you were to kind of like tell like a 16-year-old me what would happen in the hobby now, I'd say you're a liar.
Right.
But it's really interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 20, 30, 40 years too. If you're collecting then. But do you happen to think that if you're a collector now, do you think you're going to be a collector 20, 30 years from now? Do you think are you gonna stop at any point in time, or?
It's kind of a tough question, I guess, to look forward 20, 30 years down the road. But I will say I've had interest as a collector of things in general since I was a kid. And I do subscribe to the, collectors are born, not made type, statements. I think collectors can also be made. I don't think that it's impossible that they can't be made, but it's almost like a genetic thing that has to be kind of like brought out of somebody. I do think that it runs in families. And so there are certain cards that I want to hold on to, for the duration, of my life, because I think it would be really fun to, pass those down. And also, people make fun of my Stranger Things cards collection, but that would be a part of that group, just because that's something where my whole family got involved in it. And even 20 years down the road, I think we'll have nostalgic memories going back to that show in particular. Now, I'm also being an optimist and thinking there's going to be kind of a universe around it. There's going to be little other things that they do with that show, to where it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's like Star Wars, but kind of a similar thing where, they bring it back, they bring people back over time. They have prequels, and the reason why I think that is because that's really what we've seen with all of the 80s franchises. All the 80s franchises that were semi-successful in pop culture, they've managed to bring them back at some point down the road. So now, as far as the value of the cards, that's a whole separate conversation. I don't have expectations that these are going to be like Honus Wagner cards, in 20 or 30 years. Right. But regardless of value, I think that that'll be a fun thing to hold on to. Maybe not all of them, but there will be certain ones for sure. So yeah, I'll certainly be collecting. One thing that I have liked here recently, and I've kind of changed my strategy a little bit as to what I'm going to be doing, at least in the short term. But the one thing I do like is important cards that I've been wanting and collectibles in general, because I collect comic books and video games and all sorts of different things. They've come down in price. I mean, look, if we go back to 2020 and 2021 as things started moving up, there was a lot of cards just went way out of my price range. And now, there's kind of like this inflection point where, a lot of stuff has come down, but is it going to keep on coming down for a lot of these cards, or is it going to, maybe stabilize or move back up? We don't really know. And so for me, I've actually been having fun looking at, I know Grail is overused, completely overused, but really just kind of really key, important collectibles that we can all agree on, that I've always kind of wanted. And instead of kind of buying smaller things, actually just kind of saving up for some larger pieces to, and kind of have a less is more mentality as far as my collecting goes. I still want to keep a lot of the volume that I do have, but I'm looking at my volume and thinking like, do I really love this? Do I love this as much? It's kind of like if I took these 30 cards and they moved away, they were gone, but I got this one thing. Would I want that one thing or these 30 cards? And I've been having kind of those conversations with myself to try to figure out what do I, and actually had a lot of fun kind of building out a list of things I like, what's the big want list, and then going from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, I agree with you on this. First off, Stranger Things, I've gotten into, I think, season 1 and 2 and a little bit of, I think, 3. And for me, a lot of that stuff is just my memories of being a kid. So that's why I watch it. And the other thing too is that there's a spooky element to it, which is very entertaining. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me to see all the horror movies of the day. So the first movie I saw, I was 3 years old, and it was The Shining.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I saw all, The Fly, Aliens, Critters. And I haven't watched a scary movie since. So it's, for me, it's nostalgia. And again, you really do have to kind of look at your collection too to see what fits at the time. Some things just after a while they don't fit. If you buy everything, after a while your collection is just going to be either overwhelming, which I think mine has been, and then B, it's not cohesive. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And yeah, so do you have any questions regarding well, anything here that were?
Oh, you mean for you? Yeah, I've got a few things. You want me to go ahead? Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to catch up with you, just kind of build off of what you just said. So you've been kind of looking at cohesion and what you're kind of planning to do. Have you had any sort of a big shift in your game plan as far as your, collecting style for, the rest of the year, or are you pausing, or like kind of what are you thinking right now? And also we're in kind of a weird economy too. So, where's your head right now with everything?
So I'm putting a pause on things going forward. I think maybe for the rest of the year. I was collecting different, like, I guess, aspects of like, say, hockey or basketball or baseball. So eras, if you will. So 1970s basketball, which I kind of blame you on, because I watched a video you did on basketball, and I was like, there's something I really meant to add to my collection. Oh, it's 1970s basketball. And so it got a little out of hand. And then I started to go after vintage soccer, and then cricket. And so I have like little bits and pieces of different I guess genres, if you will, within the hobby collecting. And now I'm going after I was going after 1960s vintage football. I am putting a stop on this because I have found that I have become addicted to card collecting, and I suddenly kind of realized that that's what had become, for me, is that I was addicted to the process of
Right.
trying to build a very nice collection. and some people don't realize that. And all of a sudden, when you had a video saying that, I just started to look at myself and my collection and saying, okay, wait a minute, there's a little bit of a problem here. I caught it, and I'm now putting a hold on everything and going more towards writing and doing videos. So that's it for me right now. But I had a blast. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna stop collecting, but I also have been in the vintage hobby now for almost 30 years. So
Yeah.
um, it's it's been really interesting. Do you actually?
Go
I'll
ahead.
go ahead. Do you actually find it that it was easier to purchase cards prior to the pandemic?
Easier as far as access, or like fund, like to finance them, or like how do you mean?
So it's really has been kind of easier to purchase cards through, like, say, eBay, but the financial part of it, I find is kind of disturbing, to tell you the truth, just how much money that these things have gone for.
Yeah. I think one thing that could have happened, and I'm just thinking about it as we're talking. I hadn't really put a lot of thought into it, but when I when I got back in 2018, I first started buying cards that I just wanted to own, and we've talked about this before. Like I bought a Joe Montana rookie card, a PSA 8, and I bought it for $140, $150, and I noticed you could buy really at that price point in that range pretty much all day. Not that there was a million of them, but point being is that there wasn't a lot of price volatility. I mean, it was kind of that was the going rate. And so I just felt like, well, I mean, I can always get another one of those, or, those are available. And I did the same thing with a few different cards: Wayne Gretzky rookie card, Julius Erving rookie card. But what happened in the fall of 2019, which I think a lot of folks noticed, was all of a sudden liquidity started moving into cards and flipping became huge. If we go back to the fall of 19, it was Patrick Mahomes, it was Lamar Jackson. Those were the two guys that were just going crazy. And then Luka, of course, also was going nuts. And then on the back of those guys kind of going nuts, there was speculation on a lot of the other stuff, the second tier players and so on. And so I think what happened is for me, I'm just talking about me specifically, is flipping was easy, between fall of 2019 and going into 2021. So you're talking about a year and a half where you're buying and selling cards, and you can move in and out of them fairly easily. I was also buying PC items, of course, during this time as well, but also just thinking like, okay, while the flipping is fairly easy, trying to take advantage of those opportunities where they were. But the problem is then it kind of ended fairly abruptly, to where the market kind of like it hit a wall, like March, April of 2021, let's just say. And then it's been kind of a steady, decline from there. And so, but I think what probably happened with me and maybe others is you get so used to that flow of, okay, you're buying this, and then you're going to sell, and then, or maybe you're grading it depending on your strategy, and then you're going to sell. And then that strategy became a lot more difficult, but nobody could see that at the time. So it's not like April, May, like, yeah, you saw prices move down, but anybody knew, June, July, August, it's just going to swing back, or, like nobody really knew what was going to happen, as far as it's been a steady decline really for over 2 years now, for a lot. I'm not saying for every card, but for a lot of cards. So I think when you just get into when you're into kind of that flow and you're just always buying, selling, kind of buying, then I think that you've then built a habit. And then even if you're a collector as well, and you've been continuously buying over a long period of time, you've kind of created a habit. Now, I think for a lot of people, they've got a set budget. They work perfectly fine in that budget. For me, and that's the video that I made at the beginning of the year, I noticed that I hadn't extended myself in the sense that I was throwing a bunch of cards on credit, but really it was more of, I felt like I was just like, my impulse control was really poor, and I wasn't doing a good enough job of, it's like, all right, payday's around the corner. and I'm already spending it. I'm spending it on Tuesday, Wednesday, and and I get, and then I pay on Friday. And then I pay for stuff on Friday, and it just didn't feel good. So yeah, so that's where I think it just got to a point where I was like, all right, I need to figure out how to rein this in. But I don't think that you or I, and actually I know for a fact because of the feedback I got, we're not abnormal. I think a lot of card collectors / speculators / investors, whatever you want to call yourself, are in a similar boat. Whether they admit it or don't admit it, that's another thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I had actually watched a video, I think a year before, of a gentleman who said that he almost lost everything because he started opening packs and just couldn't stop. And that really kind of reminded me of my teenage years and just opening packs at card shops, and I kind of forgot that, what it was like when you opened a pack for the first time, and that certain distinct smell that you got.
Yeah.
And it kind of like makes me think too, with the 90s cards in particular, that gloss that they used, it I don't think it's up I don't think it's upheld very well over the last 20 years, from what people are telling me, that they're finding these cards now in blocks, just because the gloss is adhering to each card, and whatever they've been using, some of them are not going to withstand the test of time. And also too, I think somebody else had said that the on card, or the sticker autos as well, are not, they're not doing so well. Like they're fading. And would you have a preference on that, on the sticker autos versus the on card?
I think like a lot of people, I prefer the on card auto just from the aesthetic. But what's funny is Brian Gray at Leaf. Now, maybe Brian Gray at Leaf was saying this because a lot of his products offer sticker autographs, but he had actually said the opposite, to where, everybody wants an on card auto, but they fade. They fade over time, whereas the sticker, it doesn't fade as easily. So I've heard and now again, that could be Brian Gray just trying to, kind of, he's a manufacturer, but it also could just be like he knows what he's talking about because he's on the manufacturing side.
Yeah.
So aesthetically, I would love an on card. Of course, when you think about like the person is holding the card, to sign it, that's pretty cool. Or at least you think they are, or maybe it's being, held somewhere and then they're just writing on it. But aesthetically, I like on card, but yeah, as far as longevity goes, that's a good question. I don't know what holds up better.
There was something that eBay had done, I think maybe last year, and it is, let me show you real quickly, just get your thought on this. It is this right here. Are you familiar with this?
I got one today. Yes.
This, because I'm not that familiar with it. I remember when it was first implemented, but when I actually received this particular card in this, so that's not the card, but I think you know what it is, and it's the 67 Topps Brooks Robinson. This has always been a high priority of mine since I was a teenager, in fact. And I think it's kind of a dumb idea, to tell you the truth, but what do you think?
So there's been instances where it's helped, to where it has, I've heard of stories where it's kind of saved people. I've also, though, bought a card that was numbered to 10, where it's one of those cards where, just doesn't pop up very often at all. And the guy accidentally put number 3 out of 10, and it was 6 out of 10 in the title. And so it kicked back. And so I couldn't get the card because he titled it wrong. And so that was an instance where it's like, oh my gosh, and then it's like, how are we going to make this happen? So, I think when it first rolled out, it was more, the reaction was, oh man, it's going to slow everything down. It's going to eventually be a cost to the consumer, which maybe eBay has kind of pushed that down with added fees kind of behind the scenes. Right now, of course, it doesn't cost you anything, at least on the surface. It's not like we have to authenticate this, so you pay an extra $1. but maybe eBay is taking it somewhere else, you know, on the seller fee or, you know, wherever they're going to probably figure out a way to get paid. But so I think it serves a purpose. And for, you know, for a lot of cards, I think it makes sense, especially when you've got I bought a $1,500 raw card that I got today. And so that's something where it's like, you know, if it was fake, you know, it's kind of nice to have another, you know, a third, you know, a grading company take a look, even though it's not perfect. I mean, they don't get it right all the time. And I know that they, you know, maybe they don't even look at it. Maybe they just like, you know, check mark and push it down the conveyor belt. I don't know what they do. But I guess, you know, it kind of gives you a little bit of a warm and fuzzy, hopefully, if someone is looking at it.
Right. Let me just real quickly give a shout out to some of the people here. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. Junk Wax Hero and Colorado Sports Dude. Thank you so much. Dennis Sela, is that right? And let's see, Stories in Cardboard. Chris, thank you guys. I really appreciate being here today. So, do you have any favorite vintage football cards? I know you're into football, so is there
Yeah.
anything you really like?
57 Tops is my favorite vintage football set. Just the aesthetic. I love how the colors are with the Unitas and the Bart Starr rookie. And, you know, I also like the is Bradshaw's rookie card set is it 72 Tops or is it 71 Tops? Bradshaw with the red border. Terry Bradshaw's. I can't remember.
It's 71.
It's 70, 71, or 72, but I love that red border, you know, Terry Bradshaw rookie card. Yeah, I like a lot of the I like the simplicity with cardboard cards. You know, now we have, you know, it's like cards aren't cardboard anymore. Now it's, you know, gloss, it's, you know, or it's made out of, you know, whatever, it's a brick of some sort. You know, so yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of really cool sets. I haven't got into the really like the older stuff. I haven't gotten into any, you know, pre 1950. The oldest card I've got, football card, is that Otto Graham rookie. I've got the 1950 Bowman, but that's the oldest card I've got for vintage football. I like the history of the sport too. Just like, I mean, you know, the NFL kind of coming along and becoming, and now, I mean, really, NFL football is the most popular sport in the country now. Football cards aren't as popular as baseball cards, but the sport itself, you know, is mega popular. So it's kind of cool to go back, especially those guys that didn't get paid anything and got absolutely, you know, whacked with leather helmets or just, you know, helmets without the correct, you know, like crossbar or whatever, the face mask.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just changed so dramatically that the game, you know, it used to be like celebrated when you have a massive like helmet to helmet hit, you know, over the middle. And now it's like, you know, obviously with concussions and everything at the forefront. So it's a great game. So yeah, I've always been a longtime football fan.
It's really interesting that you can really kind of piece together a very nice vintage football collection for really kind of like, I think, pennies on the dollar, really, compared to baseball, where it's just so exorbitantly expensive for even like the average collector, guy like me, where I would have been able to grab a lot of 1934 Gaudis or Diamond Star Hall of Famers, and now I wouldn't be able to touch half of my collection that I have now if I were have to really kind of do it all over again. I don't see that there's any way that I would be able to do that. I, as far as vintage football, for me, I really kind of got into this set right here. Is the 56 Tops, and that's because Chris from Stories in Cardboard, he had on his channel, which I highly recommend, these cards, and then I think the 1955 Tops All American as well. But I really love the design of these cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, obviously I'm a big sports historian, so you know, I'm going after maybe not Hall of Famers, but guys that may get in the Hall of Fame and someday. So it's kind of like speculating. And you know, there's certain players that I'm not sure exactly why are in the Hall of Fame, but they are. And then I kind of have to go and research and so as far as do you collect any baseball or basketball, obviously, or anything like that?
So I feel like I missed the boat on vintage baseball. You know, going back a couple of years, if I had started in 2018 with some of the vintage baseball stuff, I would have been fine. But you know, over the last few years, vintage baseball has moved up dramatically in price. And kind of to your point with vintage football being kind of pennies on the dollar in comparison to a lot of the baseball stuff, I really just focus my attention on football, you know, and some basketball as well. So some of the vintage basketball stuff. So yeah, it's been kind of I'm in a weird spot with vintage in general because it has moved up, you know, pretty dramatically over the last few years. And a lot of it is not super rare for what I'm looking for. I'm looking for lower to mid grade stuff. So then it's kind of like, well, you know, there's certain targets I've got, but I'm not in a huge rush, you know, for a lot of those. If they come up, they come up, but I'm focused on just kind of some different things right now, but I'll be back to it and I'll pick up things kind of as it makes sense.
Okay. I remember you got, what is it? Is the Bart Star rookie? Is that the one you got?
Yeah, I got an SGC4 star, and that was one where I'd been looking for a while, going back a couple of years for that card. And it was expensive going back a couple of years. I've seen more and more of them pop up in 2023 for sale. And at the National last year, I tried hard to buy one, and there wasn't the right copy for what I was looking for. I really was looking for centering and surface really being the priorities, and just could not find the right copy. And then this 4 that I got, I was really happy with. And then of course, just with it being a 4 instead of a 6, you know, the price point is different, you know, which is great. I mean, there's 6s that were twice as much as what I paid for the 4 and don't look as good as the 4, in my opinion. So
What do you look for when you're looking for a card, like specifically? You know, like, is it edges? Is it centering? Is it the photo? You know, other than being the player.
yeah, I've been trying to. So on the football side, I was buying, you know, Hall of Famers, a lot of different types of Hall of Famers. And then I was thinking, you know, I'd rather actually switch gears and move more towards kind of the best players, and really focused around Tom Brady going back, you know, a couple of years as well, which is kind of, and look, his stuff is expensive too. So it's like, you know, you're picking your spots with Tom Brady. But for me, it's, you know, and I've always been really open about it. I do care about values at the end of the day. I've got, you know, 4 kids and a wife. And so I do have, yes, I've got PC cards. I've got Dalton Hilliard rookies and Bobby Hebert rookies, but I'm not breaking the bank to buy, you know, the Bobby Hebert cards, you know. So if I'm going to spend significant money, then I want to be really careful with what that stuff is. So yeah. So, and to answer, Orlando had asked here, does Dustin only collect graded cards? When it comes to vintage, yes. Just because I've been back in the hobby for 5 years. I don't believe I have kind of the eye for, you know, especially because most of the cards I'm buying are on eBay. They're being bought online. So, you know, I'm not super confident in my ability to you know, look at a couple of scans on eBay and figure out if that's a real. Plus, I've just heard so many horror stories from people that actually do know what they're doing, that have bought a card online and then it's fake or it's, you know, trimmed or whatever. So I do buy graded cards when it comes to vintage stuff. But if it's modern stuff, I'll buy raw cards. Look, I mean, and I know I won't talk about Stranger Things cards, but you know, none of them are graded, you know, so there's certain things where it's just like, there are no graded options, you know? So like for that stuff, I'm mainly buying raw Stranger Things cards because there's really no one is crazy enough like me to go out and grade those cards. I probably, in all seriousness, I probably own more graded Stranger Things cards than anyone on the planet because I've graded them myself. So, and that's not a joke. Like I probably do have the most graded Stranger Things cards. So it really just depends, Orlando, on what it is. But for vintage, absolutely. The only way I'd buy a raw card is if I'm walking around with you, Ryan, like we did at the National, where we were looking at raw vintage cards. But I just found, honestly, that a lot of the stuff, it's like obviously the dealers know what they're doing. So if you're buying a raw Jim Brown, let's say a second year, third year card, they have it priced out pretty well to what if you sent it in and graded it, it's probably a similar price. I feel like they were pretty good about pricing their stuff. I mean, it's not as if you were going to get like an 8, and they're going to sell it to you for a 4 price.
Right.
I mean, they know what they're looking at.
I think so that National was really interesting for a whole lot of reasons. Every time I think about Atlantic City, I have to smile, otherwise I'd cry. So, but I had a blast at the National. I know you're going. Unfortunately, I can't go this year. I will go next year though, because I'm gonna miss all of you guys. Honestly, I think it would be awesome just to get together and see what's out there and just the stories and the cards. But that National last year, I had a blast. I saw things there that I had never seen before. And a lot of things did kind of surprise me. For example, there was a table where this guy had just stacks of hundreds on the table. I took a photo of it, and it was a deal. I don't know what the deal was, but it was just that much money. It now with all that money, all that stacks of cash. Do you think that maybe we could lose perspective on a dollar just through the hobby, through buying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's turned into a rich man or woman's game. It really has. I mean, it's, you look at inflation in general. I mean, you look at how much bread has inflated over the last few years and compare that to a box of new product sports cards at Walmart or Target. I mean, it's like, why are sports cards, 3 times what they were, going back a few years, and a loaf of bread is, I mean, it's funny to me. I think too, the manufacturers are just late in, and I don't necessarily blame them, because, you design a set and then you've got to print it. You've got to, and I'm sure that's probably a 9 to 12 month process. I feel like a lot of the print runs and everything, they're still reacting from 2020 to 2021. Now that product is hitting the shelves. They've already made the decisions on it, but it's overpriced and it's overprinted.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I think Raul from AIH Sports had said that history does not repeat, but it rhymes. And I think it's really spot on, because I was reading an article from, I think it was from 1986, 87, where Don Russ had kind of admitted that they were printing only as many cards as the year of the sales for the year before. So they did this from 1983 through 87, and while Topps just printed everything you can imagine. I think I heard where Topps had printed like 30,000 or 30 million per player, or something absolutely ridiculous.
And when you think of that too, they're talking about sales to the retailer. They're not talking about sales to us, to like the customer. So the retailer might have bought all of that stuff, but the retailer ended up throwing it, marking it down to, $1 a box or whatever they needed to. So they sold it technically to the retailer, but, I mean, it's not that we were buying it all. It was sitting on shelves. It was just sitting there,
And what's funny about this too is that the prices for these, the distributor was selling these boxes from the 1980s at inflated prices, because they said, now this is probably true, but speculators started going into the hobby in the early to mid 1980s, just kind of like jacking up all the prices. and so you see like an inflated price in Beckett. And you know, today I'm wondering how many cards are really inflated. Probably, as you said earlier, probably not too many, or things are kind of leveling out. I mean, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the added element now that you have that we didn't have back then either, and really you didn't have until about 10 years ago, is breaking. So that's the other kind of, well, we now have a sports betting element. I mean, breaking is basically the definition of speculating on cards. It's instead of buying. Now, granted, I understand for high-end product where breaking can make sense. Like you and I are not, let's just say we were trying to buy flawless football or something, which I'm not trying to buy a box or a briefcase or whatever that comes in, but we're not going to spend $10,000 on the briefcase, but maybe me and you buy in at whatever, 200 or 300 or whatever it costs, 500. I don't know what it is. For high-end product, I can see how it sort of makes sense, but then when you go down the line on it, it just doesn't. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it also adds kind of that sports betting gambling element, that, and I don't understand how. There's people that'll push back on that breaking is increasing the price of product. I don't see how you can make a case that breaking doesn't have any impact on secondary market prices for product. I mean, of course it does. Like, how do they have to pay to get product? They're going to overpay, and then they're going to pay up on to get the product, or they're going to get allocation and then jack up the price for the cost of the break. I get that there's strategies on how to work, but it's still like, I don't see, the case against that. I mean, if you take that away, if you took it away, then yes, maybe there's not as much product being opened because breakers are not opening that product, but it's still, you have it deflates the price of that product, for the average. I mean, what were hobby boxes 5 years ago for Prism? $150 for a Prism football hobby box. And now they're what, $600, $700, $800. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that's a huge, massive difference.
Yeah. I'm just, me being like, I'm a modern card outsider. So I'm really on the sidelines looking in to see what you guys in the modern hobby are doing and
Well,
what you're playing.
and to be fair, I'm not involved in it because of this, and it's kind of frustrates me because this is part of the reason why I'm not involved. It's one of the reasons why I'm not involved. I'm also not a big speculator on players. I know a lot of folks like to do, baseball prospecting. You've got the first Bowmans, and look, I can understand the fun of following a player in the minor leagues and then trying to buy, because a lot of those first Bowmans are inexpensive. And even if 90% of those players don't work out, there's still kind of a fun element to trying to figure out kind of a fantasy football, fantasy baseball, part of it. I can see that, but yeah, I'm not buying a lot of modern cards, to be honest. So
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm just watching what's going on.
I had seen a couple of boxes sell for $1,200, and what you're getting in these boxes is like what, maybe 4 packs or 8 packs with like four cards in each one, and mathematically you're not going to get your money back no matter what. So I'm not going to say it's a sucker's bet, but it's something that again, when we were speculating on players when we were kids, the cards were not worth that much. What I'm trying to say? It was a lot different. I mean, first off, you had like 36 packs per box, and it was a lot different. Obviously, the hobby is a lot different then.
Yeah.
But today, though, it's still the junk wax era. I mean, I know some people don't like that term now because, but it's still the junk wax era. It's just a different take on it. And, again, we don't know, but these one of ones, what are they going to be worth anything in the future? Maybe it depends on the player, depends on a lot of stuff. I think we've already seen this though, kind of play out 30 years ago. 20 years,
Yeah. But, so the one thing is, if we had had eBay and we had had the internet 30 years ago, would we have operated the same way as the young people do today? Because there's always kind of like, man, young people are, they're all about the money and they're buying and selling these cards. Well, I remember when I was 10, 11 years old, me and my buddy Alan went to the flea market to sell cards because we traded with each other, but we were like, it would be cool to have kind of like our own card shop, so we can go to the flea market and we'll sell some of our cards. Maybe we can trade with people there. But if I think back to 1990, 91, when we were doing that, now, I mean, if you're a young person, you have the ability to put cards up on, your parents can set up a eBay account and you can put those cards up on the eBay account and sell them and buy. There's a lot more access to be able to run it more like a business, like a buy, sell, trade, as opposed to when we were kids, it was mainly just trade or sell it, or it wasn't sell it. It was like trade with your friends or trade a good card to the card shop owner who would then give you 5 more packs for that card or 10 more packs. So we're just in a different world now. So when I look at young people now, they've got the Pelican cases and this and that. Yeah, it's easy to say like, man, this is crazy. But 30 years ago, it probably would have been us if we had or an element of that, if we had the option, if we had access.
There was a time when I tried to sell a card to a dealer, and he said, I don't sell it to minors because it can create a lot of problems, and he basically said that if I can remember correctly, that it could be seen as taking advantage of a minor, and nobody that I knew sold sports cards, and even trying to trade was very difficult. So I have really, the last time I think I really sold a card was a few years ago, and I haven't really sold anything from my collection in 25 years. And it's just, I find it a hassle, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be true too?
Yeah, it depends on what it is for sure. Especially too, and again, kind of going back, we had kind of the buying, selling, flipping frenzy of 2019 to 2021, where it was just it was almost kind of like a tease as to, if you were getting it in 2020, you might have thought that was a normal sports card market. And I think that's where people got messed up because I got in a couple years earlier in 2018, I had seen that there was not that volatility, like that was not a normal occurrence. Now, I think part of what was tricky going into 2019 and then kind of the euphoria around that was, okay, is this the new normal of what the sports card hobby is going to look like? Or is this just a function of money supply, trillions of dollars hitting the economy mixed with sports shutting down because of the pandemic and sports better, like all these different factors, all these different things. And I think what we learned is it's probably a mix of all of those things. Like it's not the new normal, obviously, kind of that euphoria. At the same time, though, you do have card shows that are still packed. There's still a lot of interest in it. It's not as if everybody just went away. You could say like a lot of big money moved out because they ended up selling high-end cards, but most of us are not operating on the high end anyway. So then you're really talking about kind of like the 0.001% of cards. Oh, okay, those have dropped down dramatically, but there's still a lot of interest at shows. There's still people that are in dollar boxes that are operating in the space. So yeah, it's kind of I don't know. And again, I think that it depends on whatever your perspective is. Some people are going to look at it as everybody left, and now we just have, the people that were here before. And I would say that I think that we still have a lot of people that are coming in now today, which is kind of like you would think that like who's getting into cards. I think there's a lot of people that are learning about cards and getting back in because they collected in the 80s or 90s. We see it all the time where it's like, hey, I'm just just got back in a couple months ago. What cards you guys buying? I've seen it in all sorts of Facebook groups every single day. So yeah, it's a really interesting time. I think everyone kind of has a view on what the hobby is, kind of like this organism that is doing all sorts of different things, and nobody has a real handle on it. There's many different ways to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's like a bag of cats, really. But that's not a bad thing. It's just everybody's doing their own thing.
Yeah.
One final question before I let you go. um, when it comes to like other sports, like either cricket or soccer, or maybe even tennis, these sports are really large. They have a huge following, especially soccer and cricket. Do you do you collect those, or do you plan on collecting them? And again, like what um how come people aren't collecting these cards as they should, I should say?
I think with, well, and I can just speak because my wife is from Italy. And so as far as soccer goes, Panini's been selling soccer stickers in Italy for 50 years or something. I mean, for a long time. She actually had soccer stickers in the late 80s, 90s when she was in Italy. So if you look globally, I think there's more of a focus on stickers. If we're talking about Europe, I guess I can't talk about Australia and I can't talk about other parts of the world where, collecting is big. Asia, I'm not sure. Maybe it's more cards than it is stickers. But you're right, though. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that there's, globally soccer fans are everywhere, but cards are, I mean, when the World Cup rolls around, you've got sticker books. And we have friends here that don't collect cards, but they have sticker books, when the World Cup rolls around and they're collecting all that stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. If you go back to the late 80s, though, I mean, there wasn't very many people that were collecting football and basketball cards compared to now. I mean, think about I mean, 86 Fleer was fairly available even in 1989, 90, 91 when I was in it, but there just wasn't a focus around that. Everybody was focused on other things. And now, of course, there's, thanks to Michael Jordan, mainly that 86 Fleer set has really kind of gone bananas. So yeah, I think the fun part is in 30 years, will cricket, soccer, tennis be on par with basketball, as far as card collecting? I don't know. I have no idea, but that's kind of the fun of it, though. I think, though, if you're in kind of your own lane and you're doing what you want to do and you have the stuff at the right price point that you want it at, then it's kind of a win-win. And then it's also a thing of like, do you care about values? Like, are you buying it because in 20 years you're kind of hoping that cricket cards are higher in price? Then that's a whole different discussion. So yeah.
No, it's for me. I don't know if you can see it in the back here. I got a 1984 Rothman George Best, and I don't know, let me see if I can. Oh, here we go. All right. So this is it. This is his last year. So his rookie is like what, 5-6 grand. So I was like, no, that's not good. But I really wanted a card of his, and so actually this is my second one. And so what I think is, for me personally, a great challenge is trying to figure out what is out there as far as European cards are concerned, and Australian as well. And that also goes too with cricket. I know Don Bradman is like Babe Ruth of his sport, but some of these cards are really kind of expensive here and cheap overseas.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's just because that they haven't made their way here. The majority of those cards are still overseas. And so what I think is going to be really interesting is what the grading companies do for these particular cards, how they're going to grade them, and then if they're going to be more popular. I think soccer has the most fans of any sport, so it's still not very popular here. And then with cricket, cricket was played extensively, really kind of before baseball. So a lot of cricket players transitioned over to baseball. So who knows what's going to happen? I just think it's a great time really to be in the hobby and be collect what you love.
Yeah, one thing you hit on that I think is important too is the hunt for niche or unknown sets is really fun. You can scroll on eBay, and that's what makes eBay, or kind of. I choose eBay because if you look at like a PWCC or Golden, it's more formal. I feel like you've got more high dollar stuff, whereas eBay is kind of like a giant flea market, like a global flea market. So it's like, anybody could post anything, and you're talking about like, with vintage cards, you might have really rare, soccer card or cricket card that just pops up on eBay out of nowhere, and you might never see it again, type thing. I think that's what makes eBay really fun. It's a global marketplace, like a flea market, where, these niche sets, and even you've told me this with vintage baseball, there's sets that people aren't even aware of that'll just come out of nowhere. And you're like, I haven't seen a card quite like that. And so then you think about soccer, you think about cricket, where that's a whole nother spectrum on what was actually made. There's probably not a lot of documentation on those sets. So it is, I think, card collecting. I think the hunt is really fun. And that's a really underrated part of what we do in collectibles, is that hunt part. And I think that as I'm getting more mature in the space, I know I'm kind of a newbie still, but that part is really becoming more and more of a focus, is, what are, for the things that I'm collecting, what are those really rare things? And then to speak to this, there will be sets that pop up, like a niche promo set or something that I didn't know existed.
Or something like this, right? This is a 1946 Kawada chocolates from the Netherlands, and this is Judy Garland. So they're all actors and actresses, but it's a beautiful set, and I wanted something of Judy Garland's when she was an actress. So you never know what is out there. And the funny thing is, before we go, is that I was one of the I think it was Allen and Ginter. One of the American tobacco companies actually issued cricket cards in 1886 and 1887 for cricket, I guess, over in Australia. And so we don't know what is out, everything that is out there. We're still finding cards that were printed 150 years ago that are just brand new to the hobby.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating thing. Again, like I always tell people, like I know certain things, but I don't know everything, and nor do I want to know everything. I want to learn as well as I go along through this journey. So, Dustin, where can people find you?
I'm the Sports Card Dad on YouTube. On IG, I'm at Sports Card Dad, and then I'm on Twitter too, the Sports Card Dad. So I'm just consistent all the way around. Sports Card Dad.
Oh, great. So thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, man. It was great catching up with you. And I'm sad that you're not going to be at the National, but we'll have to hook up. I know you might be moving, so hopefully you're moving closer and we can get together more often. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much again to everybody in the live stream here. I really appreciate it, as always. And I will see you all later. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks, guys.